Hello, music lovers and music enthusiasts. This is Srikanth Sharma. Over the years, I've worn different hats. I've been a music learner, music enthusiast. I've been a music teacher. I've been a musicologist. I've been a critic. I've also seen Carnatic music as an outsider. And as an outsider, I've also seen the outside music, outside in the context of India. I've seen Indian music from abroad, and I've seen Indian concerts being hosted abroad from India. So, and having in my previous sessions spoken about the propagation of music and such, and on such topics, one thing I found compelling is to discuss some of these jargons that is used in the Carnatic music art space and the industry space. We've also spoken in the past about whether this is an art or an industry, whether this was a space or a spot, whether this was a self-lilting, uplifting music, or was it an extravagant, outwardish, outlandish music, like how we see. I've, over the years, seen Carnatic music being called world music, Indian music, traditional music, religious music, and sometimes it's called Carnatic rock, seeing some of the musicians perform, you know. The variant we have. So to say, I wanted to help in the demystification process. This is not a mysterious music, but over the years, and of course, this being Carnatic music being one of the oldest music known to us, that's come complete with its shastras, the science behind the music. We may all be aware, or some of us may be aware, that the first treatise that we have today, we have access to, is Bharata's Natya Shastra. What Bharata Muni does, circa 200 before Commons era to 150 after Commons era, or in the Commons era, what Bharata Muni states in his treatise is relevant even to this day. He discusses a lot of science and the traditional practices, do's and don'ts with regards to music, and also Natya, the dance form, and then the Vadya Sangita, the instrumental music, so to say. But today my focus would be about the Carnatic music, South Indian classical music, Karnataka Shastriya Sangita, or many of these aspects would also be mostly, largely applicable to the Indian Hindustani classical music equivalent. So welcome to Demystifying Carnatic Music, and in my bid to de-jargonize the words, the next 20 odd minutes would be spent in this regard. Some of the areas that I would be covering today, touching upon, would be music and musicology. What is this music, and what musicological aspects do we employ, or where are these? And the objectives, why one should learn Carnatic music, what are the options that are available to educate oneself on in this niche music area, and how do you induct an outsider into this music, because this has got a lot of cultural dimension. It's not a music in isolation. And also, do we have access to benchmark repositories, and where are these, and certain aspects around that? How do musicians in this space coordinate with each other? How do they collaborate? How do they come in touch with other musicians? How do they really network and jam? So that is one thing I would touch upon. And most of us, India is called a land of organized chaos, like how famously Rajiv Malhotraji puts it. So in this beautiful land of organized chaos, we also must talk about statistics and numbers. And my favorite thing in life has been the 80-20, that sort of that famous proportioning that we all stick to, Pareto, is it? So would that apply here, and things like that? But we are bad with numbers in this industry. But just a quick attempt then will be made there. And Carnatic music Is this an avocation? Is this a profession? Is this a tradition, or is it just an extension to the bhakti movement that the original composers started or began relating to? And I will also talk about who the stakeholders are. I don't want to call them as clients or consumers or end users or experiencers, but there are many stakeholders to Carnatic music, and how do we relate to them? And lastly, I will be talking about the pedagogical aspects and the dogma, the Carnatic dogma. And with that, this cartoons that I've used is just to sort of complement my ideas out there and to create a gentle distraction. Now, what is Carnatic music? Some people say, Karneshu atatihi iti Karnataka. That means something that is pleasant to both the ears is Karnataka, not as in a geographical state of the 1960s, 80s, and the today's world, but something that is pleasant to both the ears, right? And both could be the left and the right. And another alternative way of looking at this could be the inside and the outside. So Karneshu, something that is pleasant to both the ears, yeah, is Carnatic music. Now, one of the oft asked questions is, what is Raga? How do you really come up with this? So Raga loosely translates to mode in English. Now, on the screen, ladies and gentlemen, you would see a continuum of some of the milestone events of how we have come up with a structure to define what is a raga, where does it belong, what goes into making a raga in terms of its structure, the keys, and the notes. All right, we have about 10 odd notes like Shadja, Shuddha Rishabha, Chaturashruti Rishabha, Chatushruti Rishabha, Shatshruti Rishabha, like that. So we have quite a few notes out here. How do we mix and match and come up with a raga is what usually baffles an outsider. So now if you look at what's on my screen, I have dated Bharata's Natya Shastra at 100 Commons era, but we don't have absolutely spot on year that a lot of musicologists agree as to when this beautiful document exactly was written, or treatise, right? Not a document. So this heavy-weighted treatise was written. One thing I must confess is this has never been outdone. For all this 2,100 or 2,200 odd years, this treatise has stood there. It's like a rock-solid pillar there, supporting a lot of musicologists, many theories. Now, so we have Raga that had Vedic origins, right? Samagana, Samaveda is where music has come from, Carnatic music, and then it has evolved. Like many things in this part of the world and its culture, it has accommodated a lot of change, right? It has accommodated a lot of innovation to the extent it's been very difficult for Indians to really stitch up a beautiful timeline with a proper continuum. But here's an attempt. I don't want to read the thing out, it's on the screens. Some of the important texts that we still, most of us refer to all these plus many more, but for want of space, I've just used a dozen odd. We must have heard about the Venkata Mukhi's Chaturdandi Prakashika, Raga Angaraga, that set, I'm already talking about 1700 years after Bharata's Natya Shastra treatise. You see, a lot happened between that. For instance, Raghunatha Nayaka says, any music that can't be deciphered and appreciated technically from the connoisseur or the rasika is not good, is what Raghunatha Nayaka said in the 17th century. So there was always this patronage between kings and the musicians who worked together with each other to bring music and its structure and give it a scientific rationale, what we see as of today. And then we have the most famous Muddu Venkatamukhi's Asampurna method of classification. When I speak about raga classification, we have a raga. A raga could be a Janya raga or a Janaka or a father raga, right? Now, for example, we have Maya Malavagola. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. It's got all the scales, yeah? 7 notes, sa re ga ma pa dha ni. Now, a Janya, an offshoot of this Maya Malavagola, will be, for example, Malahari. There are many. Sa re ma pa dha sa sa dha pa ma ga re sa. See, you can find out there is no ni here, nishada, varja, right? And while going, we have sa re ma pa dha sa, just 5 notes, pentatonic, arohana. And while coming down, we have sa da pa ma ga re sa. We have ga out here. So this raga, needless to say, is not a sampurna. It's not a full-scale raga. So a Janya raga comes from a parent raga. So this is how a child and a parent raga connects. And for example, a parent raga is more often also referred in many, many ways. It's called Tai raga or Janaka raga, right? And things like that. So a full-scale raga, Mela Karta, right? So for those of you who really are interested in this, I've written a full paper on the evolution of ragas. I'm glad to hand the paper out to them. So such is the vastness of the musicological aspects of Carnatic music. We've got about 2,000 years of history. There are multiple documents. Document is a lightweighted term, as I mentioned earlier, treatises that holds gravitas even today. So some of the jargons I began to appreciate while I was having my formative Carnatic years. I've just tried to list them out here. Just some of those terms that came on the top of my head, really. Shruti, Laya, Devarnama, Kriti, Sangita, Rakti Raga, Bhava, Tala, Jati, Chapu, Tani, right, Pakavadya, and whatnot. So there are not many really. So if someone who is not initiated into Carnatic music could just appreciate those terms that are on the screen, you're already a half or more than half quality connoisseur that any performer would like to engage with. So like any music, like any industry, Carnatic music has got its jargon, and let's get cracking on a bit of historical aspect. I told you Bharata Muni's authoritative treatise, the Natya Shastra, has got no fixed date. So allow me to date it anywhere between 200 before Commons era to 200 Commons era. Carnatic music is both modern and ancient because it did not get a structure in a short span of time. It evolved like many things have in the last few thousand years. While the first document, heavyweight document that defines the Shastra, the science of music that we have access to today, if that is around 100 years before Commons era, you can imagine what must have happened. One can imagine when the other documents that may have gone away from human access must have been created. So one is it's ancient, needless to say, and it's very happily married with one of these, the dharma, the religion of the land. This is why a lot of Kriti connects bhakti and the matu and the dhatu. Matu being the spoken part and dhatu being the underlying notes or the swaras. Though there are certain manipulative ideas that come up every now and then to separate divinity or bhakti from the musical component, it is so happily and gladly welded that it's very difficult. Like Tyagaraja says in one of his Kritis very explicitly, Sangita Jnanamu Bhakti Vina, right? Tyagaraja makes a statement, very, very bold statement, without bhakti, you don't get Sangita Jnana. And even if you have such Jnana, it doesn't lead to righteousness, right? He defines this in one of my coming slides. We will talk about it. And it's got a structured pedagogy thanks to Sri Purandara Dasa, right? He's really laid a foundation of how to teach music. The pedagogy, the science of instruction is very clearly laid out here. And some of my friends from the other music genres do come and, do identify what's good in here, especially with the way the pedagogy is laid out. So thanks to Purandara Dasa. Again there we have Sarale verses. Sarale simply means simple. Then we have Janta, then we have Dhatu verses, then we have upper sthai, lower sthai verses, lower octave. Sthai is octave. And then we have Gita, which is the simplest form of songs. Then we go on to learn or teach Varnas. And then Varna simply means color. I mean, and to me, the whole of Carnatic music is a color. It's a shade, right? So Varnas really give the possibility of what can happen in a raga. Very famous Mohana Varna in set to Aditala. Ninnu Kori, for example, of the many, is one of the basic Varnas that Carnatic musicians are taught world over. We discussed that this has got roots in Samaveda, and Bhakti and music are complementary. And more original research work is needed by Indians, people who live this culture and believe in this culture, as opposed to accepting, the scholars who come from outside because they haven't lived in the land. They definitely have a lot of respect on the subject, but it's just that feel for the culture and having lived and having heard music right from childhood and identifying themselves with the swaras and shruti and the languages, the spoken word. So that's the missing bit. And the cartoon on the screen talks about a jugalbandi. Again, jugalbandi is another term where two genres of music gel on the stage. So this is a cartoon's take on that, on the jugalbandi or the experimental fusions that happens. The famous jugalbandi that I remember is the one that happened with two giant stalwarts, one from the north and one from the south. Many of us may remember this. Dr. Balamurali Krishna and Pandit Bhimsen Joshi. So who will not want two more legends like that to come up and do jugalbandis on any day? Quickly moving on. What is the objective of learning Carnatic music? Right? Now, this is basically, as I mentioned a few times, a part of a culture. It's indigenous to this part of the land. I've been to Vienna, for example, where the Western Trinity, Western classical music trinity lived and worked. Now, it's very strange for me to find an Indian or a Pakistani or an Indonesian or a Sri Lankan or a Mauritian to lead the way in Vienna. It's got a culture. It's got a certain origin. Certain people are comfortable doing that. I mean, historical, that's how we have seen. So you see a lot of white people, Caucasian people delivering huge orchestras there in Vienna. It's not to say Chinese and people of color have entered into the forays of Western classical music, but predominantly it is Caucasian music. The origins are there, and because British ruled X number of countries, I just can't remember the number of countries they came into, and so hence they also took the music. So influences are world over today, right? It's a hybrid of influence. There is Carnatic music influence in the West. There are a lot of PhD papers that are being written as to how Carnatic ragas are needed to be taught in Western university, even in the midst of learning Western classical music. There was one interesting paper, again I have access to this for those enthusiasts, where a research scholar talks about how Carnatic rhythms, you see, all these patterns, these could be used centrally to teach the world percussion. So this is one of the research topic of about 15 odd years. So likewise, like how Vienna has got a color to its Western classical music, Tiruvayyaru, which was the central place where the trinity of Carnatic music lived, and composed and created a legacy of sort, if I could say so. And what we refer to as the golden era of Carnatic music worked. Really has a character of its own. It's got a vibe of its own. So the objective here of Carnatic music is to really be on the right path. Most of the compositions talk to us via the compositions. The same thing. It's about Sanmarga, the path of righteousness, yeah? The good path. And then, so the objectives could be multifolded. You see, I mean, you can't expect a professional to make an objective, a mission statement saying that I would like to follow righteousness. So it is performance, it is bhakti also, it is innovation. For some people, it is just a tool for sadhana. You know, they sing classical music, Carnatic music as a matter of routine. And I have a lot of senior people in my house who do that. I mean, for them, it's implicitly a way of life, singing music. Every event has music. So education, how do we really, in the Carnatic music space, how do we educate? What are the options? At a macro level, you have a very informal setup, you know, self-proclaimed teachers. They may not have degrees, they may not have social, you know, recognition or qualification of any sorts, but they are music teachers. They've got a lot of music, and I remember a lot of names. They may usually, I mean, some of the names I remember are children of famous legends, popular musicians, right? I don't want to name names, but they have just learned good music. It runs in their house, not in the genes, because I put the stress on the environment as opposed to hereditary when it comes to appreciating or learning music. So you have a lot of musicians that have come to stay and make loud signatures, who are making it big in the music industry today, Carnatic music industry, who have picked up music from their family members. So this is the informal landscape of music propagation, education that I'm speaking about. So you have many teachers, many gurus, you know, many mentors who push music, who help many musicians to come on stage and then take the message of music to the masses. So, and then you have universities that are deemed, that are government owned and all that. You have those universities that are dishing out bachelor's degree and masters of music and things like that. So, and then you have diploma in music and other formal qualifications. Now, what happens to, what are the job prospects of a diploma in Carnatic music? Or a master's degree holder in Carnatic music is a brilliant topic for another day. Right now, we discussed about oral way of learning. We also discussed about informal ways of learning, and then these very formal approaches to gaining certificates. Now, the pedagogy, we discussed this. We have a brilliant foundation in Carnatic music. We start from Sarale Verse, the simple patterns, up until RTP, Ragam, Thanam, Pallavi, that is another dragon, RTP. So moving on to induction, how does one get a hold of Carnatic, a grasp on the Carnatic contours? If you ask me, the landscape is too vast, but the induction is still 95% KLV, something that comes by listening. How I learned English, for example, or how I was taught my mother tongue. In fact, I was never taught. I was there when my family was speaking the native tongue, isn't it? So induction into Carnatic music is as simple as that. So it really sometimes when people beg the same question again and again as to if my son could perform in the next 6 months, we'll do anything that it takes. The answer is simply a no, big no. So the induction happens by oral tradition, you say. So the family must have music. The parents must have an understanding of how important this is. They must put focus and emphasis on this learning more. And we know what happened to many of the Indians, so to say. We are after engineering and medicine, aren't we? And these days maybe data and statistics and artificial intelligence. But the focus must be on music, to an extent, even if you want the wards to pursue two careers, one music and the other one a professional degree, so to say. Now, this slide, I've definitely and deliberately made it noisy. I just don't want the details to be going into your head when I'm talking. There's this wide wide call that, or a wide, very grand narrative that Carnatic music is casteist and it is by the Brahmins for the Brahmins. So I don't know. I don't want to go into defining who a Brahmin is. But according to Vedas, one who is after knowledge is a Brahmin. Anyone who is after Brahmajnana, right, and who puts that to the good use of the society is a Brahmin, right? A Brahmin is twice born, or I think we use the term Dvija. Dvi is twice and Ja is born, right? Dvija means one who is twice born, one in the mom's tummy, and second time when he's initiated into the learning. And you see, this is the importance of culture that I'm talking about. So a Brahmin is twice born, once in the mother's womb and second time into the area of initiation. So anyone who initiates himself into the area of learning, right, takes a deep dive into learning is a Brahmin, at least according to Krishna and Gita. But now the new social order may have alternative interest in subverting the very innate messages. Right now, in this regard, I mean, it really surprises me that when some people say this is by the Brahmins for the Brahmins, Carnatic music, it just deeply offsets what I gather. Yes, there are social biases, like very ugly biases, I mean to say, like racism, classism, casteism, and I hate all of them equally. But I do make a distinction between caste system, and casteism. And the third one, casteism, I have a lot of spite on the very concept of casteism. So, but anyway, coming back to music and its secular appeal, I have absolutely no doubt that caste, creed, has no role to play in Carnatic music. And why do I say this? For example, we have I have two famous names all the time running on the top of my head. Dr. John B. Higgins, and B stood for Bhagavatar, or we'll call him as John Higgins Bhagavatar, and Dr. K.J. Yesudas. I mean, these people transcended across boundaries and learned music. Yes, they have issues with pronunciation, they have issues with certain aspects, but this is how secular it could get. I mean, and these were no singers. One is a living legend. Who would not know Yesudas, right? He transcends classical and non-classical, including the film music, where he's got millions of fans almost seamlessly. So this music has no boundaries. As I mentioned, it has a certain induction mechanism, and then using the non-Brahmin terminology, if I'm allowed to use that term to these great legends, I would like to invoke the names of M.S. Subbulakshmi, who was one of the female trinities of Carnatic music. Again, she was no ordinary singer. She was not a legend. We call her and identify her as one of the three female trinities of Carnatic music. She was not a Brahmin. M.L. Vasantakumari was not a Brahmin. And the current legend, top singer P. Unnikrishnan, is not a Brahmin. Brinda Mukta, the makers of musicians, right? They were the teachers of many, many legends. They were not Brahmins. And again, when I say Brahmins, it is the synthetic Brahmin that the English asked us to identify us with, the surname Brahmins. They did not have a Brahmin surname, but who could be a better Brahmin than these Brahmins? So Kadri Gopal Nath was not a Brahmin. Mandolin Yusrin was not what. Shirkali Govindarajan was not. And Veena Dhanamal, and the list goes on. You could actually, my own favorite, Dr. Mangalampalli M. Balamulli Krishna was not a Brahmin, so to say, in the social context. So this by Brahmins for Brahmins is something that I would like to reject. And we really need a very secular approach and a grand narrative around secularism and music, because we must not initiate everything into the world of spite. So with that said, I would just put this. There is, however, bias, human bias, social bias, gender bias, across the world, everywhere, in every aspect. Go and speak to a Bollywood actress. She would tell you tales, emotional, proper tales of what would happen to her when she would enter an industry. May not be for everyone, but mostly. We have heard this. We see this in newspaper column inches, don't we? So that said, I would like to thank D.K. Pattamal here, again, one of the Trinities, alongside MLB and MSS. D.K. Pattamal was the first Brahmin woman to perform in the public. So if at all there was anything, there was dogma around Brahmin women coming out. So there were non-Brahmin women who made it into the Carnatic Trinities before Brahmin women came. So, but that said, Carnatic music is plagued by the same issues that the society generally faces. That's it. This slide really talks about how musical mathematics takes center stage when a legend performs, or when a quality musician comes up, or a musician who is performing for All India Radio, AAR, comes. So there's a lot of music, and on the screen you see a guy trying to decipher the mathematics and the structure of the Swara Prastara, possibly, that is happening that is being delivered, all right? So again, these cartoons, though, are a distraction for the serious pursuit that we are into. What are the career paths for a Carnatic musician? What is there in this space? I've highlighted the one: guru, mentor, and teachers. We really need, and there are many highly qualified and well-informed, comprehensively, all-rounded musicians who train musicians, teachers, and students alike. So apart from that, I've listed a few that came on the top of my head. Not least, festival organizers, festival administrators. Right. Now we need to really have a good take on ironing out the 80-20 idea here. The idea of repeating a musician for the last 10 years, again in the 11th year, is not a good thing. So as festival organizers, anyway, that's my rant, my take. But otherwise, coming back to career path, we have all these and many more. I mean, as I mentioned, we have sound and PA. I mean, I'm happily sat in Chalet Studios out here in Bangalore, and I'm speaking about music or many aspects of music out here. And I'm very well supported by my friend Joe here, who's doing sound, and his colleagues doing the light. So many things. There are, if music was the physics, there are many metaphysical traits and career paths around music, like many other industry or any other industry. We need translators, we need critiques, we need musicologists, and so on and so forth. Now, this cartoon talks about a couple of judges asking a participant who is walking on a tightrope with a mic in her hand, I think, and the judges ask her, "Hey, now can you sing the Swarajati for the Raga Ardha Vishwasini in 3 mixed octaves while doing 1 flip, 1 twist, and 2 somersaults in Khandajati Adatalam?" Yes, this is absolutely melodramatic, but I'm sure most of us who have gone into the competition space, or who have put our children into the competition space, will appreciate that this is how these today's reality shows are making music appear, right? So yeah, we'll take this and think that this is a joke for now, but I think the show organizers must really water down on what they do with the shows. More focus on music, less focus on the gimmickries. And again, I have some talking points that I mentioned here, like how famously Edison mentioned it's 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. In Carnatic music, can I alter the numbers and say it's 75% inspiration, really? You want to, in today's world, in 2021, we want families, parents, and children to really get that inspiration from either radios or television shows, or the legends that I've just now listed and that I've not listed. We've got to be inspired. Do we believe in Carnatic music, right? So that is the whole thing. So that is the inspiration I'm talking about. And then the Kelvi Jnana, again, I put that into the inspiration box. The hearing to music. We have digital radio out in India, which is 24/7 DTH channel that beams constant music, beautiful music. And it's for the first time we've got a chance to integrate the music from across the country, classical music. So, and 25%, of course, perspiration. While it comes down heavily from 99% of Edison to 25% in Carnatic, it is simply because this is Shravana Jnana. Music needs Kelvi. You got to listen to it. You got to appreciate the subtle aspect. So this is why I just thought I'll manipulate the 1 and 99. Now, then we have a lot of talking points, right? I mean, honestly, this slide gives a food for thought to at least about 200 PhD doctoral awards, right? Is Carnatic music listening, or is it a hands-on? Is it performance, or is it sadhana? Is it social messaging, or is it climbing the lobby ladder, the performance ladder? Is it art or an industry? Is it Sanmarga or Sanmana? This is my favorite. Right, Sanmarga, music as a tool to put us on the right track, like how the original composers have intended. What I call as a composer's feel. We are their matu and dhatu. And then the second one is the Sanmana, right? The recognition, the social space. Is it practice, sadhana, or is it performance, the giving up? All right, so we have also spoken about whether it's therapeutically lilting music, uplifting music, or is it just fitting into the 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour concert, getting as much of applause as possible. What I initially mentioned as Carnatic gig, Carnatic rock stars. Yeah, we find a lot many musicians today seeking, almost demanding applauses as opposed to really pushing the larger agenda of Carnatic music. And lastly, slightly controversial, a stranglehold monopoly by a particular community, by a certain set of musicians, repeat offenders, I call them in my last talk. So yeah, these are talking points really. I have nothing to add there. Now, thanks to many selfless repository creators and volunteers here in the digital space, today we have researchers labs, Carnatic labs. In Bangalore we have Indian Music Experience. It's a beautiful museum which every visitor to Bangalore must really get into. It's 3 hours of therapeutic experience. It's an experiential program. So things like that. So there are laboratories. Then Indian government is putting all the doctoral collateral documents, artifacts into the repository. And then we have a lot of digital and physical libraries. While physical libraries need a bit of updating, recently I went into a university library and music section needed really dusting off. Forget about ordering the most relevant copies. So yes, we got to use them. We need to update them, and we need a lot of Google scholars in the space. We need, as I mentioned, Swadeshi Indology. Likewise, Swadeshi musicology. We want pure and honest and original research work that is done by not necessarily musicians, but enthusiasts of Indian cultural assets. We must never forget that this is one of our very strong cultural assets, right? Or Sanskritic assets. A few things I've listed there. My favorite is shivkumar.org, right? Again, this gentleman is treading on two paths. I mean, right? He's on two different boats. So he's a scholar, he's a networking professional on one side. He used to work for IBM, shifted his company of late, I think, and then he's been building up a beautiful repository on music. So, and the URL is on the screen, carnatic.com, rasika.org. Rasika.org is a huge digital networking space. You can ask questions there, and I've been a beneficiary of all this and many more such spaces. Now, I mentioned India is a land of organized, beautiful KVOs, or beautiful land of organized KVOs. So we have many music universities, many music venues, and I'm talking about this repeat performers, 80-20 syndrome, that the organizers, either they are too lazy or they are baffled or they are closeted with a bunch of performers. And we still want numbers there. Numbers is where things matter. Mentioned about the PhD galore, innovations none. Again, this is another paradigm that we need to move away from. Each doctoral award must create something. And then we have beautiful doctoral theses that we have access to already. We need festivals database thanks to search engines, but do we have one centrally stored festivals database is another talking point, right? So we need to beat the poison pill of popularity, right? We're always about certain leaders. We want leaders to follow. Instead, I think we are a country of what, 1,400 million people. We must never be, our hunger for good music and innovation must never stop with top 10 or top 15 musicians. Otherwise, the fate of music may be sealed. So, when I come to speak about the music seasons, Margali Utsav and Margali Tingal, or Bangalore season, Ramotsava series, I'll talk about that. And again, this cartoon digresses us about and brings our visibility into some of this much needed humor. Right, now the Shakti Bhakti debate that I've already lightly touched upon, I'm just trying to bring some focus into the separation of the Matu Dhatu and the Bhakti, or in the context. You can't separate Carnatic music from Bhakti, like how Utukadu Venkata Kavi says. He emphasizes the need to weld Bhakti and Sangeeta together, right? And he brings this out in his Karahara Priya Kriti. Now also, Tyagaraja, as I mentioned earlier, talks about the Sanmargamo, the right path, versus the other social pursuits in his Maryada Gadura Kriti, right? And I've also put the lyrics there. See, this cartoon is my favorite of all. It's not got much stuff, but it's about a little child coming and singing up until Ma, and she's being appreciated heavily out here. I don't know if this is about a music competition setting or it's a coffee chat, but in music space, we really want to identify good talent, not just praising what comes on stage. And if it's about really training, if it's about induction, yes, I mean, music must begin early. 2 years, 3 years, 4 years is already too old. Like how, if a child hasn't learned her or his mother tongue by the time they've crossed 2 years, parents are panicking. Music is as important as that. I mean, the young years, the early years, the toddler's time must be, some amount of that must be taken by music. Very passively, really. You don't make them to sit and put thala and all that, but the music has to be around. Now, the stakeholders. This is not an exhaustive list, but then, yeah, audience is majorly a huge stakeholder here. And again, in one of the research, it comes up that the audience really come from a certain community. Again, this is another talking point. I mean, where the talking stops, the problem begins, right? The cancer forms. So a lot of talking points are required, really. So audience come, today's audience come, at least in India, from a certain segment. And for example, today's in India, land is owned by a certain community, right? We don't call that casteist, right? And so on and so forth. A business is very efficiently run by a certain community, right? We call them Chettis, Shettis, Baniyas, and whatnot. I mean, there are hundreds of names. We don't call that casteist, but calling musicians casteist is slightly not so scientific. And again, we need to really change the narrative here and not allow music to be hijacked by certain vested groups. Now, these are certain boundaries, festivals and sponsors, society, morality, people in the boundary of the stakeholder analysis. So we have music critics versus dharma, or the very Hinduism critics coming into this space. So we got to watch out, hear it out. Music aids tourism, and who has not enjoyed the beautiful canteen food in Madras season, right? Margali Utsavs. Right. This cartoon is really about, this is Carnatic music, as I initially mentioned, has taken a lot from other cultures. And while the Westerners came here to loot our raw materials and enslave us and take us as their human property, right? While we were working, India is a land rich in everything, including being moral, right? Being, what should I say, ruled over. We are rich. We have been richly ruled over. Now, one of the Trinity's brothers, Muthuswami Dikshitar's younger brother, Baluswami Dikshitar, hears to church's music. There's beautiful violin being played in the Sunday church, must be as part of their rituals, Sunday rituals, mass, whatever. Now, Baluswami really loves the music, and this is where music transcends boundaries. It's seamless. It's about your heart, less of mind and brain. Brain, maybe none really. So Baluswami Dikshitar really falls for the violin sound. He somehow makes a connect with the people of the church there, while many of us were not allowed to go inside, so to say. But he makes this connect with the violin because he loves the tone. And today you see no Carnatic concert could be called complete. I'm not talking about the experimental Carnatic music without a violin on stage. So it's very close to human vocal cords. So such is the idea of this culture. We've taken a violin, which is an instrument coming from a faraway land, from our invaders, either French or English church. It is alleged that Baluswami Dikshitar saw this instrument in. Now, you don't find this context in Vienna. I have never seen a Western orchestra having a tambura or a mridanga amidst them, even in 2021. So there's a certain openness to this culture. I'm not trying to imply that this is better or another model is better, but this is how people or peoples of India accommodate changes and adopt, both with ADAPT and ADOPT. We adopt and adapt to a lot of things, and we have indeed. So here the joke is all about the singer wearing a suit to deliver the English note that I think that's composed by Patnam Subramanya Iyer. I have spoken about the festivals. There are many festivals. These are again induction points. A child or as someone in their impressionable age, if they are taken to music regularly, it helps. And we have a lot of music that's happening at all major cities and towns, I think. Definitely some of the things that I've heard, I've experienced out here. Thiruvayyaru, we may not know, according to me, it's one of the world's largest congregation of impromptu choir. People come, just crash land there and start joining the Pancharatna rendition. So, yeah, we've also discussed about the pedagogy, and like other industry, we have dogma also here. So with that, I thank all my listeners and London International Arts Festival's many volunteers and parents who support us. And a big thanks to Shale, who have made this presentation happen. Any questions, don't forget to shoot a small one-liner to info@dhruvarts.org. Thanks a lot.